Okay, so we're starting the planning for Sprint 5, which is a 3-week sprint starting today and ending August 25th. So the key thing to keep in mind for this sprint is that we are at feature freeze. And so by the end of the sprint, we'll need to make sure that everything is checked and reviewed and merged for the feature to be in this release. So at a high level, as we look at the platform and work that's going on there, I want to provide just a high-level view of where we're at and what folks will be working on from a platform standpoint, and then we'll get into Jira. So as we look at the kind of prioritized list of requirements for the platform, some of the things that we're noting here at a high level is the red items are the things that will be considered out of scope for this release, right? And so there were plans to do exception and error handling that will be out of scope. We did some trade-off in terms of dynamically onboarding Xproto into the core with the ability for us to eliminate the hard-coded service dependencies, replacing the legacy XOS UI with generative toolchain. That was also, we did a trade-off there. Reconcile use of event buses, that will be out of plan, as well as everything as an Ansible playbook.
Sorry, and the legacy UI, that should be orange because we may be able to achieve that.
Okay, we will make a note.
Teo, this is Larry. Is it the case that you could get to this, you think you'll get to the state that no one's using it, but you haven't quite been able to delete the container?
Yeah, that's where we should get.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think the only comment is we shouldn't do it at the risk to other features that we've committed to, right? So I'll make a note that it's orange. But yeah, the system is kind of quirky right now. So if we were to look at it from a sprint mapping standpoint, we've got quite a bit of work going on in this sprint. The good news is the new model policy framework was done early, so that shifted out to sprint 4. Items that we have out planned, error handling, the refactoring synchronizers, there's been scope reduction in that, and SAP will cover that. Possible Volta integration, so thought was doc only, that would be Jono, update fabric configuration, and ONOS, the plan would be to integrate with ONOS 1.10.3. Last week, Ray cut a release for that, so we should be able to use that. Volta is also planning to use that, so we need to make sure that we're doing some coordination from both the Volta and Cord standpoint. And then a possible 3.x.0 build to integrate eCord and ACord. In the ACord meeting this morning, they said that they will not be able to make this. From the eCord standpoint, is there anyone on the eCord side? And can we confirm whether we're going to have a 3.1.0 release?
Yeah, we actually had a discussion about this morning. So we think we are ready, but the real test will be next week to see if our, all our deployment procedures and all of that really come together. So we will try to make it for this sprint. This is a 3-week sprint, by the way, right?
Yes.
So we should, that should give us another week if we find any problems. If there's bigger problems, then we'll have to go in sprint 6. Okay.
Okay. Yes. Sprint 6 should be okay because we're not talking about shared delusion. And then breaking hard-coded service dependencies, that would be Scott Mateo, and then logging phase 1 and 2 would be Varun. Zach is doing open cloud. Let me scroll down. Deprecating and removing the old build system, Zach and Andy are looking into that. And then we're planning to do some unit test and coverage metrics of SonarQube, but we've currently run out of people. So I'm trying to figure out if Luca can cover that. So that's a question mark still. Okay, so this is the high level picture, and then we'll go to the Agile board. assuming things work. So, so if we were to look at all the issues.
I want to increase the size of your screen.
Good enough?
Maybe a little more. I don't know.
It's because you guys are on the projector. Okay. Good. So let's start by going through the various epics. There was a recent one that was added, container-based orchestration. We'll have to discuss this one. So there's a story in the backlog to create architectural document for Delta between VTN and container overlay networks. Gopi, I missed this, but was this intended for the sprint?
I was so if you open that, there are a couple of subtasks in them. I'd like to do at least one of those subtasks in this sprint. This has been split into two parts. I could split them down further if granularity is required. But one would be documenting the overlay network in Kubernetes, and the other would be documenting the architecture of VTN. And then doing it, maybe that can go into the next sprint. But yes, one of the subtasks I'd like to finish this sprint.
So I would recommend that you create story size for this sprint. So whichever ones you're planning to tackle first, go ahead and pull out that as a story, and then add it into sprint 5.
Okay, so 1665 is already a story. If you need one story, yeah.
I'm fine if you think you can complete it in the sprint, right? You currently have it at 8 points, so I assume that means it's for the whole sprint. So if you,
yeah.
so if you think you can.
I think there is a slightly higher priority item, 1400 that I wish to do this sprint. It should not take too much time because there is a lot of knowledge with Andy. So I think that's maybe a couple, two or 3 points. So I'd like to do that and one subtask. So if it is one story point per sprint, I'll break this up further into story points, and then I'll add that to the sprint.
Okay. So I assume you wanted to do the Kubernetes one, and then just make sure you add it to the sprint.
Yeah. Okay. I'll do that.
Okay. Thanks. Service and tenancy models. Okay. Scott's out. So Matteo?
Yeah, so I can report on Scott's part too. There is still some cleanup to do on the model definition, and we need to enforce the service interface. Basically, we define this new attribute of service to verify that we connect together only services that can effectively talk to each other. And then there is the UI part of it, the new visualization of the service graph. There is a small amount of design work to be done, and after that I'll start the implementation. It shouldn't take too long, but I've not yet specified it. It mainly depends on how we decide to represent the data. We have a rough idea, but I want to circulate a document today or tomorrow and fix everything.
Okay, this is why it's 0 story points?
Yeah. I'm planning to add subtasks to it and to quantify the subtask.
Okay. Thanks, Matteo. And then we'll move on to uniform development environment. Andy? Zach? Andy or Zach?
Are you expecting me to do that?
Sorry. Who's this? So we're on uniform development environments. So can Andy or Zach go over your stories?
Yen, can you hear me?
Yes. But there's quite echo.
So it looks like Gopinath had 1400. That's the make-based build with the hardware pod. The next three are mine. One's adding multi-stage build support to image builder. That lets us build images with more than one more than one parent. There are a few other things in image builder that will probably get fixed with that. Then 1566 is the config step should dynamically build a list of synchronizer images from the profile. As our number of synchronizers and services increase, especially as we bring eCord and mCord into this, that's making it so that when the build happens, those are brought on rather than being statically defined through a whitelist. And then Chord 1650 is refactor interface and bridge handling. I talked with David Bainbridge about this. Basically, I wanted to simplify the naming that we use for some of the interface names and bridge names on the pod so that it's more easily understandable when you go onto a pod and you're looking at network names and those sorts of things. And that's mainly these are other cleanup things to help with development.
So is this last one, Chord 1650, is that a kind of, can I think of it as like a prerequisite for the open cloud deployment?
Yeah, it fits in there too, because one of the issues that we had there was it wasn't too clear where the which network ports went to what, and a lot of it had just evolved over time and wasn't really designed in a formal sense.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, so I noticed the priority isn't high, right? And I understand you've got a lot of things going on in this release, so do we feel that these tasks are at risk?
Sorry, we didn't catch that. I think we were all muted.
Okay, so my comment was, from a priority standpoint, these aren't very high. So it seems like you've got a lot of other things going on too. So I was just trying to understand if these are.
My primary thing is to support the eCord deploy in China. So these are fairly, if I get to it, I get to it sorts of things.
Okay.
You're gonna have like a 16-hour plane ride or something, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Plenty of time.
I'll just I'll buy another seat for the pod. Yeah.
Okay,
I
thanks.
just want to see you power the pod from the the 12-volt outlet at the seat. That'll be funny.
Mm-hmm. Yes, but there is also Wi-Fi, so feel free to buy some Wi-Fi. Logging. So I don't see logging stories in the sprints, but I think the plan was to get through a lot of the logging stories, Sapin, since you're working with Varun. So
yeah. Probably wanted to move the stories from the previous sprint to this
Right.
sprint.
That's right. Yeah.
We do that.
Okay.
Did you want to give the update?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I had a meeting with Sapin today. Basically, so I showed him my source code. We have a skeleton in progress right now. Sapin's going to take a look at it, and yeah, over the rest of the week, we're going to flesh it out. And after that's done, what we're planning to do is reach out to people who are running experiments and basically ask them if we can switch in the new logger, have them use it for a while, and collect some feedback from them, see how it works. And yeah, and just as that happens, just keep updating wherever we see the old logger being used with the new logger, and basically just yeah, go with that. So that's the plan.
okay, thanks, Varun. So now we shouldn't have any. Okay, Matteo.
Yeah, so the plan is to work together with Scott to eliminate dependencies from VTN and from vRouter, as those are the two services that will most likely be used by other configuration. So we'll start from there. There is a small possibility that we'll make to clean up all the services, but these are the two that are really important to clean up, so other deployments can use those
Okay, thanks, Matteo. Stefan?
All right, so this is the reduced synchronizer refactoring set of tasks. We're not going to be able to do the full-fledged refactoring of synchronizers. I guess in the previous sprint and throughout this release, I've been having conversations with people about scoping out this refactoring. Thread of that conversations involved design and coming up with an overall vision. That was one of the set of tasks we came up with at release time. And the second thread was improving the implementation, kind of addressing the points of pain that people have in developing synchronizers. And so I prioritized the second thread of discussion. And so there's a Google Doc out there called Synchronizer Survey that has a bunch of things, implementation items. I've picked a few of them and divided them into these two tasks. So there's better diagnostics for the synchronizer. This involves logging. So the stuff that Varun is doing is one part of logging, synchronizer logging. That's the mechanism you use to send logs and store logs. But there's also the actual information that the synchronizer sends out that needs to be improved. So information from multiple threads gets interleaved, and there isn't enough visibility into dependencies, right? So if something goes wrong because of the dependency failing, that information is not explicit. And so there's stuff to do along these lines. So that's the part that fits into better diagnostics for the synchronizer. And this is dependent on some of the inner code of the synchronizer, the event loop and code around that, which is dated, has been sort of accumulating code changes from multiple people over the years. And so that needs to be cleaned up. And so this is the set of tasks I've come up with. If people want to look at that document and swap priorities around, mention things that they think are more important and things are flexible, I can reprioritize things. As far as the larger plan of fleshing out the sort of long-term design goals, so that's stalled a bit. That's a conversation to carry on, but we're going to sort of deprioritize that since we're not going to be able to act on the outcome of that conversation in this release. So that stuff gets pushed to the next release. Yeah, that's it for this.
So I think my only comment is we've got 3 weeks for the sprint, and these stories are at 2 weeks already. So I don't know that there is much time to react to a change in priority of requests here, right? So ideally, I think we would have vetted that this was the list.
Yeah. So, and it's not going to be yeah, you're right. So if anything of that sort has to happen, will have to happen like today or tomorrow or pretty soon. So I agree. We don't have a lot of time left.
Okay, so I think if anyone has any feedback, let's just make sure they voice it within the next day or two. Thanks, Evan. Rewriting Tosca engine. So migrating the existing recipes, is that out of scope for Shared Delusion?
Yeah, it won't be time to work on it, but we are shooting to. There is a task later in eliminating SQL UI container, that is taking care of the last step we need to do to enable the new Tosca engine to work. So the plan is to keep the two in parallel for this release. And in this way, when eCord and mCord will come on board on 4.0, they will be able to use directly the new system while we migrate the other parts during the next release.
Okay.
So Matteo, sorry, we got multiple computers here. So there's going to be two parallel Tosca ingestion systems, one in the UI container and the new one. Am I understanding correctly?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the idea is to maintain the old API, since we won't have time to migrate all the existing recipes, but bring up the new system to work so that any new recipe that gets written directly to the new one, and we won't need to migrate thousands of recipes at once.
Okay, so new ones to the new recipe, old ones to the old for a while, but they aren't identical, right?
No, they are similar but not identical.
Right, so they aren't simultaneously supporting two versions of Tosca, similar but not identical. Will eventually deprecate one of them.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So I think we need to start tracking the items that aren't complete and see whether we prioritize it in the next release. Right, Larry?
Well, yeah, this was one. Several of these we're now faced with our usual end of release time dilemma, which we are so close on eliminating so much code that we would really like to make go away, so people don't continue to code to it. We have to make even if it's still there, we have to make very clear: don't do an admin PY, use the new GUI. Don't write to the old task interface, write to the new one, and so on. And we can handle that with release notes, I suppose, but we aren't quite getting to the point that we've eliminated some of the things we wanted to eliminate.
Yep. And I think
I would assume these would be like the first week of the next release. We would finish those off, but that's all. I think we can manage this just through very careful release notes.
Yep.
Not ideal, but that's I think where we're going to be.
Yes, release notes and best practices in terms of documentation and development. And then the other thing is making sure that we're tracking these for the next release so they don't fall off.
I don't think we're going to forget these, but yeah.
Well, usually we end up having a lot more stuff, and so by virtue of the fact that we're bombarded with new things. Okay, new policy framework. Happen?
So this is a task for documenting the policy framework that we've developed via Xproto. So I'm going to be working on the documentation.
Matteo?
Yep. So the core 1556 is the one I was talking about before, is to enable the new Tosca engine. We have already talked a lot of time about this. I think I'm close to get this one done. Well, the second one is the bug helper for developers that want to see error fields that are currently hidden from the GUI.
Okay, thanks, Matteo. So we do have this one item. I'll need to ping Luca and see if he can pick that up. Otherwise, we won't have the unit test metrics. Maintenance.
So the First one is mine. Last week, we noticed that we don't have the copyright header in every file in the Chord source. So I'll go ahead and add it. I'll make, of course, a script for it, and it shouldn't take too long.
And it's updated to the ONF one?
Yeah. But we don't have it now, so I was planning to use directly the ONF one.
Okay.
So the next batch of these are all related to updating ONOS to 1.10 and updating the fabric configuration to use that. So those tasks are in there. Also for testing the changes, I was going to make some updates to Chord in a Box with the experimental fabric feature. So I think it was never quite working, but it should be pretty straightforward now to get it working because for one thing, the ONOS 1.10 can be used with just vanilla Open vSwitch instead of CPQD. So I think that'll make things easier to work with. So I was going to try to get that working in order to do testing.
I can talk about Scott's because I helped him debug it. We had a problem where we're generating OpenStack passwords using an MD5 sum of some other piece of data, and when that turned out to not contain any A through F hex digits, it was recognized as an integer and failed because OpenStack complained about the password being an integer, not being a string. So that's solving that problem by going through and making those passwords generate right.
Okay, and the next three, the 1652 is a small bug that got reported next week that I have to look into. We had a feature request to add a description and human readable name to Exprot in order to have a better visualization and a simpler understanding of the GUI. And I also have a request from eChord and mChord to backport some feature to Chord 3.0. This last sprint is the one. This last item is the one I will sacrifice in case I will not have enough time for the sprint since I'm a little bit more than 15 story points. That won't add any new features, so it could fit in the next sprint.
Okay, especially since it'll be on the 3.0 branch. No automation that I know of. Charles?
Okay. Did you just skip the dual homing DHCP relay and
The stories? Ah, I did.
okay. So for dual homing, Sarva and I still have some bug fix and refactoring to do, and I also have another story about route failover in a dual home scenario. So I think that's it. Oh, and by the way, in this sprint, I kind of separate dual homing, DHCP relay, and multicast into their own epic. So as you can see on the left-hand side. And then the DHCP relay and multicast will be primarily driven by community members. So a story from E over here. I think some of them are actually done, right?
Yeah, some of them are done, but even so, yeah.
So which one is the one you're really going to work on? Which one are the one you are really going to work on?
First four.
Those four of them? Okay. fourth one is first, right?
You mean the fourth?
Yeah.
No, fourth.
Oh, V6.
Fourth is currently under review.
Oh, it's under review. Okay. No, it's first. Anyway, and then I think there are more stories, and those will be if you scroll a bit down to the backlog. I think some of them are running right now by the community members, but I don't know their progress.
Yeah, so we'll talk to Nokia and see if they want to track these stories in our sprint. So that applies for both DHCP relay and for multicast. We're going back to dual homing. I don't see the router integration, dual upstream router integration stories, and won't be doing that this sprint.
Yeah, dual router. Yeah, I think Jono has some story in the
fabric feature.
Yeah, I haven't moved it because I'm not sure if those should belong to dual homing.
Maybe after
Epic.
this.
Yeah, maybe after this we can move that to. Anyway, we'll get to there. It's just the next epic. So, sorry, can we go to the fabric feature improvement?
We're actually going to get dual homing in 2 weeks.
No, it's not meant
which is
for.
what the sprint is.
So the next release of Cord is going to use 110.3, right? So it's not meant for Cord shared delusion. But we still track fabric stories in the Cord sprints. So this is more for the future.
Okay, but it's not. We don't expect it to be completed in sprint 5 then.
Dual homing? I'm actually hoping we do, but we'll see.
Okay, thank you.
Right, and here we have some. So basically, I keep this epic fabric feature and improvement to track those stories that cannot fit into dual homing, DHCP, or multicast. So basically, some bug fix over here, and also updated documentation, and also some kind of smaller tasks we assign to our new team members, Simon and Junghwan.
So basically, after this meeting, we'll figure out for dual router, upstream routers, what stories we need to put into dual homing.
Jono, is that in the backlog right now?
I don't know what stories you're talking about.
Yeah, we'll figure it out after this meeting.
Yeah.
We're close to getting we're actually there. The parts that I was working on and the parts that Charles was working on, they both work now together. So we're ready to move on to integration with the external dual home routers.
Right. Yeah, but I didn't have any stories that I had on my plate for that, right? Or
there's one about dual home router it's a MediaNet topology. Do you already have that in the backlog?
I don't know.
Anyway, I think we can figure out this, and if we have those stories, we can put it into the sprint.
Okay. Expand QA coverage.
Okay, for QA, first 6076, that one is about realigning XOS-based tests. There had been some changes in the XOS, and many of the test cases in the Jenkins job are failing right now, so we have disabled those tests. So this sprint will align them and then add them back to the Jenkins job. And the next story is about the scale module in Core Tester. We need to make some changes. Some of the development for the scale module had been done by Sienna in the last sprint, but there were some issues. So we're fixing those issues and then validating these test scenarios on pod. So that's the task for this sprint. And the next 4 tasks are all about, these are all tasks from Sienna. And their plan is to enhance the DSCP and IGMP modules in Core Tester and then integrate and then test them from the world context perspective. And the next one, 1696, which is expanding API tests to cover combinations of all parameters. Currently, whatever REST-based API tests we have are covering only few or a minimum required attributes. So our plan is to cover and have a permutation and combinations of various attributes from the model, and then enhance this coverage from the REST API point of view. And the next task is about the creating robot test cases around VSG component and also some other components, and then trying to run them on the pod. So this task has been taken up by the RISES team, and we had some issues in the last sprint running some VSG tests on the pod, on the physical pod. So there need to be some changes in the quad tester framework to be done. So this is about this story. And the next one is bug. I think that's for Zach.
Yeah, that's in making it so that the master branch of the XOS API sanity pipeline job is more efficient, because dealing with the new way that containers are handled in master.
Okay, thanks, Zach. 1554 sanity tests to physical pod. This is the story which was carried from the last sprint. There were some errors and issues while we were running some of the test cases on the physical pod, so we couldn't close the story as such. We will try to rerun them and then close the story by this week. And 1555 is about adding sanity tests for XOS GUI. So there are some test cases from TO, and we plan to integrate them as part of Jenkins job, so that we also have some coverage from the GUI perspective as well. These are very basic sanity tests. And 1692 is about negative testing for NGIC. Currently, in the last sprint, we have worked on creating a Jenkins job for NGIC from Intel for the Intel testing, and we had a call this week, and then we were planning to expand this Jenkins job to also have some negative testing coverage for this, based on the roadmap which was given from Alt and Ping. So we have to still discuss about how we need to go about that. So that's the story about 1692. And the last one, gRPC API test. We want to expand further on the gRPC API. Last sprint, we have achieved creating the gRPC API test using the XOS GenX tool. So now we want to increase the coverage of gRPC API by including more attributes and combinations, and cover all the parameters in the in the APIs. And can you scroll down, Jan, for the performance?
How's 1696 different from 1697?
Oh, that one is for the REST API.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there is one more from performance. Oh, you do not see that. So. Okay, sorry. But then I just moved it just before the meeting. So this there is a story from Sienna. They are trying to develop the framework to test the performance of VSG and VCPE components. So we need to enhance the coverage in the core tester. So we are going to enhance the framework.
Okay.
That's all for QA.
Okay, we'll move on to eCord.
Yeah, let me just get closer. So a couple of high-level remarks. One, we don't have that many points, mainly because a little bit like Zach, our main focus is on the deployment in China next week. Second is that most of these tasks are really kind of tying up things to prepare for a release. There's no real new functionality anymore. So just reviewing, first task on that list is a testing activity. Then there's two that follow that deal with documentation. Then the fourth one, unified configuration script, is really a refactoring activity. We have all the pieces of the configuration script, and just putting it putting it together and parameterizing a little bit. Then the fifth one, I think Francesco made a mistake here because I'm not quite sure we are ready with Fabric integration, and something I'll need to sync up with the Fabric team. Then the last but one, the last two have to do with UI. The first one really spilled over from the last sprint and is really connecting the new global service into the UI, and then a testing activity on that as well. So that's about it from my side.
Okay, thanks, Mark. MCord. Ping?
Yeah, this sprint we will focus on building the product 3.0 and then testing all the features we already implemented. Because next month is already the MWC is coming, and we need to support our collaborators to make them to correctly use the MCord pod. And they're using different versions indeed. Some are based on master, some are based on 3.0, and some are still based on 2.0. So we need to support all the different pods. Based on that, we need to add a new feature to the MCord. In the X1, the BBU is not virtualized. It's still located in InnoB. So we need to let the InnoB to talk to all the several VMs. So we need to take all the features from R code or code and to make it work in the MCord, set up the communication. The 1095 is to implement the EPC as a service. This is a brand new feature and a high-level feature which is composed by several small services. The MCord, we start to implement this one. The next one is need to test all the network tags inside the pod, which can be tested, fully tested in the code in the box. And the next one indeed we already fixed that figure. So the last one is Intel pod will use the master, so we will refactor the Intel service profile, not just to 3.0, also need to master for the demo.
Okay, thanks, Ping. Hardcore, Jonah?
Yeah, so I added a whole bunch of stories here which are related to basically automating the bring up of Volta and automatically provisioning connectivity from Volta to the OLT hardware through VTN and the Fabric. We just had a meeting with Zora beforehand, so we may end up changing the prioritization of some of this work in favor of some other work like upgrade on us, but yeah, we're still need to talk through exactly how that will go.
A lot of stories are under Andy right now.
Yeah.
And Andy's traveling to China this sprint? No.
Zach is.
Zach is traveling.
I think we had talked about versioning the apps too, right?
Yeah, there's that. We also discovered some other places where the on-us config will need to be updated, apart from just the Fabric config.
So do we have all of those stories captured?
Nope.
No, so I think we'll have to chat with Andy and come up with these stories.
And work with David too, right? Because we kind of need to coordinate this with the work that's going on with Volta.
Yes, and David, yes.
Okay, thanks, Jenna. Zach, anything for OpenCloud?
No, that's continue to work and get that going. Right now it's hanging on the item with renaming the interfaces. That's it for that.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, let's move on to the performance brigade. It looks like there are 6 or 7 issues. I think the other one was the test one. Andy?
So we've been continuing to try to validate the changes we made last sprint to set up DPDK in an automated way. It's not 100% working, so we've been working to try to figure out what the problems are, and we came up with a bunch of, I guess the first 3 stories are actually more, or the first 2 are actually more bug fixes. So we need to make some changes, additional small changes to the setup. I'll go ahead and fix those so they show up as bugs instead of stories. Then I guess the next thing we want to do is, so we're using Cord in a Box for just basic testing. So we need to see things working there. But then just in terms of get an end-to-end test working with the DPDK stuff enabled. As soon as we get to that point, then we'll switch over to physical hardware. And so Cord 1687 is about setting up a Jenkins pipeline for automatically installing the software changes on a physical pod. We're going to use the QCT2 pod for this. It sounds like it's not otherwise claimed right now. And then we will try to validate the setup on real hardware. And once we get to that point, then I think we can turn it over to the QA team, who, as we heard, are busy creating a testing framework. So that's the point. I think that we declare this epic done, and QA team takes over. Oh, there's one more, which is just documenting the setup procedure. So people can reproduce what we've done.
Okay, so based upon your burn down in the last sprint, I expect this to be fully done by the end of the sprint then.
Yeah, probably all the points will get burned down on the last day of the sprint.
Yes, ideally it follows the other graph line. Okay, hierarchical cord.
Hi again.
So I'll go to issues. Okay, Rick.
Okay, so there are three epics that we're working on. This is going to be a very lightweight sprint for us because we have most of the team is on vacation for all or part of it. There's 3 major items here. The first is to, and what you've got up on the board here is to come up with a couple of example services that we're going to push through the development environment, and just do 2 things with those. One, see what we this is essentially a very simple run through of the development environment we're going to build, so we can make sure that it works. And after bringing up the local services, we want to be able to abstract out the exprotos that we're going to need for the global services that are used to link them together. So that's number 1. Develop the sample services that we're going to put on these things. These are very simple. Sapin is going to come up with a hello world service suitable for HCORD, and I'm going to try and wrap iPerf in a service description, because that is one of the simplest and most basic services we can think of. The second is to come up with a minimal HCORD development environment on Cloud Lab that we can swap in quickly and reliably, and push everything through the tool chain in within ideally 15 to 20 minutes, to go from swapping in the experiment on Cloud Lab to getting the develop service through the tool chain and up and running from an Xproto file to installed and visible on the UI. And that's assigned to Matt. And then the third one, which is also assigned to me, is 1601, which is to formulate use case-based H-chord requirements. Andrea has been doing this for E-chord. I'm doing this for what we've been calling World OS / a catalog of open cloud assignments. And the idea is to have the use cases fully document and pull requirements from those use cases as quickly as we can. Oz and Sanjay will be doing that for M-chord. I don't have commitments from them as yet as to whether or not they're going to get their requirements in for this sprint. And that's it for 1599 through 1601.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Containers? We had talked about it.
Yeah, so I refactored one of the subtasks as stories and added that to the sprint.
Okay, and then I think the plan is there would be a container brigade meeting tomorrow, and there may be more stories coming out from that.
Yes.
Yep.
So
one other red herring is that we'll also be talking to AT&T later this week, and they already have a container-based solution, at least partially done. Based on that task, there may be some tasks about integrating their part of their work into what we're doing with COD that might seep into the current release or current sprint or into the next sprint. But I'll document that as we go. But that meeting is scheduled for Thursday.
So the note is feature freeze by the end of this sprint. If there are new features, we'll have support branches cut, and then the new functionality would stay on master, right? So keep that in mind. And because the container meeting is tomorrow, I'll start the container sprint tomorrow, end of day tomorrow.
Awesome, thank you.
This way you have the leeway to throw in more stories. But for the rest of the folks, I think end of today, I'll start the sprint. I heard there were a few things outstanding. So the vRouter integration with Fabric is pending. I think some of the work around ONOS and versioning is still pending conversations with Andy and David, right, and Saurabh and Jono. So if you can get those in. Varun, the logging stories, if you could pull in the ones that you're planning to cover. I think those were some of the things that had flagged that will need updated by the time we start the sprint. Okay, because we want to make that burnout look good. Okay. I think that's all. If I've missed anyone, let me know. On the 8-chord side, they're still in the process of getting 8-chord working with 3.0. But a bunch of the POCs around OpenConfig, those were done, at least based upon their update from this morning. Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, I think we're good with this meeting. Okay, thanks everyone. Like I said, I will start the sprints end of day today. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.